It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Back to the program, we've got Congressman Rick Crawford is on the line. Rick, it's always great to have you on, sir.
Hey, good to be with you.
I just want to say I had an incredible time interviewing your colleague, House Intel Committee Chairman Devin Nunes. It was great that he was in Arkansas, and I know you were instrumental in getting him here.
Well, yeah, we served together on the Intel Committee. He's done some remarkable work, and but for his tenacity and leadership on this issue, we might not know anything about this business with Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, the business with Bruce Orr, Fusion GPS, the dossier, all this kind of stuff. So, it's been pretty important a couple of years.
It really, really has, and like you said, he is, kind of on the forefront of this. But, I just am really thankful that you're on that committee as well. I mean, and, we have an Arkansas delegate that's up there, pursuing these facts and this truth. And, the media in so many instances is, reporting what's dubbed fake news. And now we're getting these reports that, the FBI and the DOJ, or the senior officials, they have this pattern of leaking, information to stories. And in some cases, they leak the information, then they use the news report to justify getting a FISA warrant. I mean, that's pretty incredible.
Well, I hope people just really take a minute to digest what you just said. And that is, it's not that we're being anti-FBI, anti-law enforcement. I mean, for crying out loud, the Democrats are calling for dismantling ICE. That's a Democratic tenet. We're not that. That's not our platform. Our platform is to hold accountable any federal agency. That's our job. That's our constitutional mandate. That's the oversight requirement that we have as members of Congress, because I don't care what federal agency it is. Who's overseeing them if not Congress? We are co-equal, separate branch of government, and the administration, is the executive branch, that's the agency. That's the FBI, the Department of Justice, the EPA, the USDA, the Department of the Interior, you name it. And we have the responsibility and actually the constitutional mandate to oversee those agencies. And if we don't do it, who's going to do it? And so, these people that are charged with law enforcement, God bless them, the rank and file FBI, I don't have a problem with them at all. In fact, the rank and file FBI, they're the ones that have a problem with their leadership. And if you ask these members that are out on the streets, that are out in the forward deployed areas around the world representing the United States and trying to make sure that, bad actors are brought to justice, they are not happy with this leadership and this cabal in Washington that's set about to try and dismantle the Trump campaign and really affect the outcome of the election. You want to talk about Russia collusion? We've got all the evidence you need to point to Hillary Clinton campaign and several DOJ officials that themselves were colluding with Russia to affect the outcome of the election. And so this is what this evidence is pointing to. And we said from the very beginning, we're going to go where the facts take us. And the facts have taken us and point to the irony of this whole thing is that the ones that were screaming about Russia collusion were the ones who were themselves engaged in Russia collusion.
Projection and deflection, project the very thing you're guilty on, or you're guilty of on your opponents. That certainly seems about what we're seeing here. One of the things I got to ask Chairman Nunes was, because people have been talking about declassification of some documents this week, the Bruce Orr documents and that sort of thing. But I asked him, I said, do you think the American people are ever going?
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program today. Really glad that you guys are with us. The phone number, 870-275-9799. That's the telephone number if you want to contribute to the conversation today. That's 870-275-9799. Sorry, I had a little feedback in my headphones there. Took care of that. We're good to go. Hey, we got a great show for you this morning. We're going to be talking at 7:33 to Dr. Michael Bustler's going to be back on the program. You know, a lot of people used to talk about the national debt. Have you noticed that no one really talks about the national debt anymore? I would just – this one we're going to have him on. And because, you know, he's a public policy analyst. He's a professor of finance at Stockton University and, you know, an economics guy, economics expert. And I just wanted to have him on, talk about the national debt or, you know, in the debt of other countries as well. I think we've talked about that one time before. I just don't hear anybody talking about that anymore and thought that used to be a problem, you know. It really and truly, the fact that you never hear about it anymore kind of makes me think that, I mean, the people who are at the top controlling this system, you know, the very, very small number of people that actually know how our finance system works. I'm talking about the upper echelon. I'm talking about, you know, the Federal Reserve, that sort of thing. And, of course, the smaller number of people that actually know how something works, the more opportunity there is for corruption. And we're seeing that now play out right here in the state of Arkansas. We've got more headlines about more loans. The Arkansas Democrat Gazette now reporting on a loan that was made from Charlie Collins, State Representative Charlie Collins, to former State Representative Nate Bell, which is fascinating to me. We'll talk about that probably more at 7:05 at the top of the next hour. But it's interesting how all of this stuff is now coming to light. People are calling it a cesspool. People are very uncomfortable with the fact that let's just be clear. First of all, let me stop. Let me back up. There's nothing criminal about loaning someone money. Okay, there's nothing criminal about that, but you do have to report it. Now, some of it, with the stuff with Gillum and Joe Jett that wasn't reported, and now it's been amended. I know that the stuff with Nate Bell and Charlie Collins was reported, but so when you get outside of the legality question, then you've got to ask yourself, what kind of representatives do we want? What kind of do we want? Someone who doesn't have financial security? And what I mean by that is, if you need those loans, that's now leverage. I mean, we're talking about, in the case of Jeremy Gillum, what we learned over the weekend was the Arkansas Speaker of the House, the Republican Speaker of the House, needed $16,000 from a Democrat. And we wonder why we can't get anything done when it comes to the Republican Party platform. I mean, just look at the facts. I mean, that's a fact. I mean, we have a Republican Party under the leadership of Asa Hutchinson that has made excuses on a lot of things. I mean, it started with the Religious Freedom Restoration Act when you had the LGBTRSTLNE, would you like to buy a Val community? You descend on Little Rock because the media was telling them that this Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which mirrored what Bill Clinton and Al Gore championed in the mid-'90s, was somehow going to allow for discrimination. And, that was the first thing that happened. And you had the governor that, who had lobbied for it, even got a Democrat to flip his vote on the committee and then backed off because of why? Well, probably because Walmart or some corporation called. I mean, that's what the speculation's always been. And then you have tax increases, and then you have then the committee assignments were back to Gillum. The committee assignments were strange. Then you have the Republican establishment removing somebody like Alan Clark from the head of Joint Performance Review after he uncovered all kinds of fraud, in my opinion, all kinds of misuse of government force when it comes to removing kids from their parents' homes. And, of course, then, we don't want him to be back on there, even though obviously he was doing a fantastic job. There's just a lot of weird stuff that's happened over the last several years as Republicans took the majority. And I know I'm kind of ping-ponging around here, but by and large, the conservative base of this state has been verily disappointed. I mean, we can just go through the list. Tax increases. We could go through the list of, increased spending year after year after year, all of this stuff. And I think at the base of that is you have people who are not committed to the principles. And if you have people who need money, like Jeremy Gillum, who had a farm, apparently, according to reports, that he needed money. And that makes him financially vulnerable, and that means that his principles, are flexible. And so he needed $16,000, the Republican Speaker of the House. Now, I want you to think about that for a second, because that should really irk even mainstream Republicans who maybe think that, Paul Harrell, he's kind of, he's too far to the right. I mean, I just think the Republican Party platform is good and should actually be implemented. That's why we call this show, Conduit News, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We don't want to just talk about it to get elected. We actually want to try some of these ideas. Because they work. But, even a mainstream Republican would have to say, yeah, that's strange, that the Republican Speaker of the House has to have $16,000 from a Democrat in order to get by. And then that Democrat switched to become a Republican, and then he was put as the chairman of the House Revenue and Taxation Committee. I mean, it's an outrage. It's an absolute outrage. Even for these, even for some of these rank and file Republicans who are not even in office, but maybe you're just like, no, we have to support the party. I disagree with you guys. I think, to what end? I was talking to somebody about this last weekend, or I guess last Friday. As a Republican, and as far as what the platform says. The idea is to not be afraid of ideas and debate and, free and open thought and that sort of thing. And I think that's a healthy thing. I think the establishment is, definitely kind of has an allergy to that. But, to the rank and file and the people who've been knocking doors in Arkansas as Republicans for 20 years trying to get people to wake up and, vote the Democrats out of office, I do think it is a healthy exercise to at least ask yourself, what would the Republican establishment have to do for you to say no more? Now, maybe it's not, push for tax increases and increase spending and, be soft on the Second Amendment. Maybe that's not it. But what is it? I think it's just healthy to at least, because, see, if you're not asking yourself that question, then you just want to be on the winning team. If you're not asking, as a Republican, if you're not asking yourself the question, what would the Republican establishment have to do for us to say, for us to be like, okay, I'm not going to fall in line, I'm not going to toe the line anymore? What would they have to do? If you're not asking yourself that question, then it's really just about the power for you. I think that, and you just need to be, and this is to all the Republican committees and everything. If you're not asking, what would they have to do? I think that's just a healthy exercise. The Republican Speaker of the House, Jeremy Gillum, needed $16,000, and he got it from a Democrat, Joe Jett. Is that not incredible to you guys? Isn't that supposed to be? We need to think about what kind of people we send down there. If you have people that don't have, financially viable jobs, they're going to be vulnerable to all kinds of things. But I think it's very sad and unfortunate that the Republican Speaker of the House was in this position. And the Marble Palace environment, the Marble Palace, this is what I've been trying to tell you guys has been happening, among other things. You have the appearance of corruption, that doesn't really mean that something illegal went on. Now, he didn't report it, and now he gets to do a do-over because of the John Woods ethics law. Thanks a lot, John Woods. Oh, by the way, Issue 3, was Issue 3 removed from the ballot? Yeah, there were some signatures that were found to be invalid, meaning the term limits amendment. I was just thinking to myself, wow. I mean, we may end up having to deal with the stain of John Woods and his deception, and he's probably going to be laughing about this, from behind bars, obviously. The phone number again, 870-275-9799. Some national headlines. I saw this yesterday. You have back on September 22nd, a couple of days ago, Border Patrol agents at the Rio Grande Valley sector, according to Bob Price over at Breitbart News, apprehended more than 2,000 migrants during a 3-day period at a tiny area known for illegal border crossings. Have you heard about this? The group consisted, according to reports, mainly of migrant families and unaccompanied children from Central America. The continued flow of migrants turning themselves into Border Patrol agents is creating an unsustainable situation, Rio Grande Valley Sector Chief Patrol Agent Manuel Padilla Jr. said in a written statement. The transnational criminal organizations exploit family units and unaccompanied children populations and create diversions for agents leaving areas along the Rio Grande vulnerable. This is just only going to get worse. I just wanted to bring that story to you at the forefront here because I want you to understand that Donald Trump ran on building a wall. That was one of his big things, a big deal that he ran on. So speaking of, I just think I know there are parts of the wall that are being built, but Congress at some point is going to have to get serious about this. In the meantime, there needs to be massive immigration reform. I think we all know that. We need to go to a merit-based immigration system like other countries have. And one of the people that has been a champion of this is Arkansas's own Senator Tom Cotton. But I saw this piece here, and I wanted to know if any of you have seen this. Feel free over at facebook.com/Conduit News. You can sound off on this. Progressives urge business to block Trump's merit immigration reform. So now we have a situation where you have progressives want businesses to basically not participate at all in President Donald Trump's merit reform of the nation's immigration laws. President Donald Trump's, quote, public charge merit reform of the nation's immigration laws. The reform allocates green cards to foreigners who less likely are to need taxpayer aid because they are skilled, healthy, or young. The reform likely saves many billions of dollars that would be otherwise spent on the welfare, health care, and retirement cost of unskilled, unhealthy, or old migrants. That reform is a big economic gain for ordinary Americans, but also a big economic loss for business because every dollar spent on needy, legal or illegal immigrants is also a hidden subsidy for business, including landlords, hospitals, groceries, and Wall Street. This is something that no one wants to talk about. But listen to this next paragraph. Some of the harms and consequences of the radical public charge rule proposed by DHS are reduced revenues for health care providers participating in Medicaid. You see, when the federal government gets involved, it's, taxpayer dollars in these big government programs for people who don't really need it is the opium. It's like an opium, and then you're addicted to it. Same thing for groceries. Look, reduced revenues for grocery retailers participating in SNAP or the food stamp program. In effect, nearly all grocery stores. Now, think about this for a second. I want to contrast this with, if this is, if the immigration rule actually goes forward and you do get a more of a merit-based immigration system, and maybe, let's say there are grocery stores that might take a hit, or let's say there are healthcare providers who are making money hand over fist right now. I'm sorry, I don't feel sorry for you healthcare providers. I know what you guys do. I know your hospital math. I know it's phony. I know you calculate your losses wrong. I mean, we know all of this, okay? You guys are the top of the health. You guys are making a ridiculous amount of money right now, and the government is going to take care of you guys, because if the whole system collapsed and we went to a single-payer system, these people at insurance companies would get absorbed into the bureaucracy and be fine, because if they threw a fit, then you'd have a problem. But, right now, here in the state of Arkansas, there are some farmers who are being very patriotic right now, and they are putting up with this trade war with China because they know, now I don't know if it's all farmers, but I know there's a good portion of farmers that understand that there has been a market imbalance between the United States and China for a very long time, and they are willing to take short-term pain for long-term gain in terms of reclaiming America's sovereignty. And these farmers out there who are willing to do this are patriots who have they're able to see the big picture and what's going on here. For a long time, I've wondered whether or not the American people would be able to sacrifice economically in order to get out of the different types of messes we've had. Everybody wants conservative, limited government until it means that your wallet might get a little lighter because maybe you didn't realize how much you depended on this government dime or that government dime. Well, what's going on right now with the soybeans situation, which is, really a small amount of money compared to the amount of money that China steals every year in our intellectual property. But you do have people who are farmers with the attitude of, hey, I'm going to do this because I know it's a problem, and somebody's at least trying to do something about it, and that somebody is President Donald Trump. Well, the same thing can be said for what's going on with our illegal immigration system. I mean, it is a big problem, and it has to do with the same thing. It has to do with sovereignty. Well, there's a lot of immigrants that not supposed to be here that could be, they could be on SNAP, they could be on all kinds of programs, and that would mean what? That would mean if you actually started to secure the border and move to a merit-based immigration system, well, the immigrants that come here legally, even the immigrants that come here legally aren't going to need government assistance. And isn't that the goal? Shouldn't that be what we want to do as a society? Well, that would mean less government, revenue going to grocery stores or going to Medicaid entities. Isn't it interesting? But you're going to have more economic output. You just want, if you're going to reform your immigration system, you would want those immigrants to come into your country and be taxpayers, right? Not tax takers. All right, we're going to take a break, folks. Don't go anywhere. This is Conduit News Radio, and we really appreciate you listening this morning. Back in a moment.
We were training Afghani nationals that we were training who would put on the uniform of the coalition, who would take our supplies and our food and our training and then walk in with a suicide bomb or walk in and start shooting our own guys. And I think you all know who I'm talking about. I'm not going to be shy. It's Conduit.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Are you tired of having to fight the crowds at mega stores just to save money grocery shopping?
Well,
no more. Bills Cost Plus is the new way for you to save big. Bills is still your meat store.
Yes, I believe that they will. Do you think that as well?
Yeah, I think, there's obviously a process by which this happens. There's probably one of two or three ways that where this could materialize, and certainly the president is going to have a say in that.
In a world full of constituents with social media accounts, bloggers just looking to increase their page views, and a talk radio host who generally is just the worst, how are Little Rock's elite supposed to conduct business with such a lack of privacy? Introducing the 1835 Club, older and more refined than other clubs that claim discretion. The 1835 Club is for seasoned political veterans that want to conduct the highest form of aristocratic business with the public's money. Are you a schemer? Do you someday want a guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support your business? Is it your dream to see the .gov domain at the end of your business website? Don't listen to the imitators. The 1835 Club is the place where corrupt politicians and businessmen hatch their next crony schemes. At the 1835 Club, we make lobbying safe and legal.
Ethics.
Why, of course. All business is done in an ethical manner. Just look for the sign above the door that reads, loophole. Are you tired of the Capitol Police restricting your access to the roof after a perfectly good night of drinking? The 1835 Club has libations and a perfectly good roof. Other crony clubs that promise discretion try to lure you in by advertising bars made out of aeroplanes. Well, at the 1835 Club, instead of an airplane fuselage, we've got a space shuttle. No, not a bar. We've got an actual space shuttle that makes a daily run to the moon so members of the 1835 Club can have some real privacy away from the bloggers and taxpayers. Are you an Arkansas aristocrat? Do you want to be? It's the 1835 Club, and we work tirelessly to make sure the good old boy system remains alive and well. Join today.
Disclaimer. The 1835 Club reserves the right to deny membership to anyone who has principles. Any talk of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution must be done in jest or, at the very least, with a condescending tone. And finally, the 1835 Club will be given a 25% commission of any agreements made between politicians and the business community.
PHP Parody. Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So we have Gene on Facebook. By the way, you can sound off over at facebook.com/Conduit News. We have Gene on Facebook writing, is the Marble Palace really a payday loan or pawn shop? Yeah. Yeah, it's just basically payday lenders over there. Seriously, you got to check out the latest story. The Democrat Gazette now reporting that they know of another loan between legislators. Now, you also got to remember the loan between lobbyists and legislators. That can happen as well. That has to be reported. You know, the first real big news story where you knew that Senator Jake Files was in trouble had to do with the $30,000 that lobbyist Bruce Hawkins sent Jake Files, and he didn't report it until he had to report it, and then he immediately paid it back. So, yeah, I got a text message during the show yesterday while we were covering this situation between legislators and loans and things like that, and Joe Jett was saying, hey, it's because I'm a good friend. That's why I gave the Speaker of the House. The Democrat gave the Republican Speaker of the House $16,000. It's because I'm a good friend. Somebody texts me and says, man, I got to get some better friends. Yeah, I think so. Hey, when we come back, I want to review issue the minimum wage. What is that, issue 5? The minimum wage increase. Let's talk about why that's terrible in our Conduit for Commerce policy segment. Also, Christine Blasey Ford. Right now, she's supposed to testify on Thursday, and now people are saying that she might be getting cold feet. You go check out the front page of Drudge Report, and Drudge Report is saying, they're asking the question here, Christine getting cold feet. So, we get to actually see the FISA applications and the documents. And he said, yes, anyway, I believe that they will. We'll be back here in just a moment. Do you think that as well?
Yeah, I think there's obviously a process by which this happens. There's probably one of two or three ways that where this could materialize, and certainly the president is going to have a say in that. He ultimately can declassify something. What we have to do is make sure that we weigh this and are very careful and circumspect in this whole process, that we don't create more problems than we're seeking to solve. And so that's why we got to get a lot of legal eyes on this to make sure that everything that we do is done appropriately, so as not to compromise. You've heard the term sources and methods.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to be careful that we're not disclosing sources and methods, and that's always a key consideration when you're declassifying, particularly this type of information. But it's interesting to note that there's a couple of things that people should be aware of. What these DOJ officials did was they initiated a counterintelligence investigation. So you might hear it called a CI investigation, a counterintelligence investigation against a U.S. citizen, not only a U.S. citizen, but a political campaign. First time in history that's ever happened. So if you got a problem with this campaign from a legal standpoint, then just initiate an investigation. It doesn't need to be counterintelligence. So what they did was they leveraged, really, and I think misled the FISA court, so that they could use the CI umbrella, an enterprise investigation, which basically means there simply, no defined parameters with no timeline, and gives them all kinds of latitude to do whatever they want. And keeping in mind, of course, that this is a U.S. citizen in a political campaign. I mean, there's no precedent for this at all. I mean, it's the first time it's ever happened, I believe, in history. And so, you've got to wonder at this point, did these DOJ officials just do this of their own accord because they were just that amped up against the possibility of a Trump presidency? Or was there some directive from higher up or somebody that said, hey, y'all need to do this because we got to make sure that Hillary wins, and so whatever you got to do to ensure that happens, go on ahead and do it. Use whatever means necessary to make that happen. I don't know. We'll get the answer to those questions at some point in time, but what we do know is if there was evidence of collusion on the part of the Trump campaign, you can bet we'd know about it.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back. Thanks so much for being with us. Phone number 870-275-9799. I'm just seeing some text messages come in. For some reason, when I'm on Facebook with you guys on my phone, I don't get my other text messages. Normally I have, when we do our normal operations, I've got the Facebook up on an actual screen, and then my phone is reserved, for the texts and everything. You can text me, by the way, 870-275-9799. I haven't given that number today, 870-275-9799. Let's see here. Yeah, just be mindful. Be mindful if you read other media outlets. I think there's going to be a move to maybe apologize for the Marble Palace looking so bad. It's not as bad as it looks, guys. I mean, the majority leader, the incoming president of the Senate, Jim Hendren, the governor's nephew, he loaned criminal Jake Files $4,000 because he needed to cover some hot checks. But there's nothing to see here, by the way. No big deal. And what does the average Arkansan think when they read that Senator Jim Hendren loaned somebody $4,000 and was just like, meh, he's not paying it. He's not going to pay it back. I don't know. And then you ask, well, what did he, where did the money go exactly? Here's $4,000. What are the average Arkansans how they think about that? I mean, is that something that they want or that they would do? Just something to think about. And of course, from the reporting of it, it was because of we didn't want Jake Files to have any negative media reports when people found out that he wasn't able to pay his bills and was going to write checks that he didn't have the money to cover. Didn't want any bad media reports. I mean, eventually those came. Eventually, the media reports were pretty bad, right? Oh, by the way, speaking of that, I mean, here's the latest from Conduit for Action. Friends with benefits, ... financial benefits. Oh, this is a good one. Friends with benefits, financial benefits. Former Speaker of the House Jeremy Gillum received loans from several state representatives. The loans from 2016 went unreported until recently. Because of the do-over rule adopted by the legislature, there are no consequences for filing false, inaccurate reports. Once discovered by the public official gets to do over the annual statement of financial interest with no consequences. According to the Gazette, you got Joe Jett loaning $16,000 to Jeremy Gillum, made in the fall of 2016. The article notes that shortly thereafter, Gillum appointed Jett as the chairman of the prestigious House Committee on Revenue and Taxation. Representative Jett fired back. We covered this yesterday, that he's saddened and disheartened. And then he talks about how the fact remains, just because a person is a legislator does not preclude him from the obligation of being a friend. That's right. If you got a problem with a Democrat loaning a Republican Speaker of the House $16,000 and then getting a committee chairmanship out of it, then you're against friendship. How dare you? I'm a friend here. Wow. I'm surprised there hasn't been at least one mainstream media outlet to talk about, well, it's actually good when it's a bipartisan. When they pay each other and they're Democrats, it's a bipartisan effort. Let's see. It was just a loan to help a friend. Sounds familiar. Listen to this. Oh, yes, we've heard that. When a $30,000 loan from lobbyist Bruce Hawkins to Senator Jake Files was belatedly reported. Files used part of that money to cover hot checks. The story about the loan to Files was broken by the liberal Arkansas Times, which quoted Hawkins as saying, quote, "I loaned money to a friend. It was a business decision. In addition to being my friend, he also happens to be a legislator." So lobbyist Bruce Hawkins has also used the same Joe Jett defense, or I guess Joe Jett is using the Bruce Hawkins defense. Man, I wonder what Little Rock thinks of all of this right now. What do you think across the state, listening on radio stations across Arkansas and listening over at conduitnews.com? What do you guys think of all of this? It doesn't really feel like it's the people's government right now, does it? It's the government of special interest, insiders, and elitists. Since the lobbyist and legislator were friends, everyone said, that's okay, we won't worry about the loan. No, that's not what happened. There was a big stink over the appearance of political favors, and in 2017, the legislature passed Act 1108, of 2017, by Senator Keith Ingram to prohibit legislators from receiving loans from lobbyists, even if they're friends. Is a loan between legislators different? Or is there an appearance of political favors? Yes, there is an appearance of impropriety, especially when the one receiving the loan is the Speaker of the House. This is a huge scandal, and even rank-and-file Republicans who vote for big government should be ashamed of what went on here. I just don't understand. I don't understand how this is acceptable. Speaker, I know Jeremy Gillum is now a lobbyist for UCA. Is that what the governmental affairs for University of Central Arkansas? That's the job he got out of this. Speaker of the House controls the House agenda. Listen to this. This is how serious this is. But if the Republican Party platform doesn't matter, then this isn't serious. But if the Republican Party platform actually matters, and if there is, in fact, a difference between Democrats and Republicans, on paper at least, then it needs to be said that the Speaker of the House controls the House agenda. He presides over the meeting of the House. He recognizes motions, he assigns bills to committees, and he has lots of appointments to dole out to his friends in the House of Representatives. The most important of the appointments being the chairmanships and the vice chairmanships. Representative Joe Jett was upset by the Democrat Gazette article mentioning that Gillum later appointed Jett as the chair of the House Committee on Revenue and Tax. But this is only part of the story. If you roll back the clock 2 years on his friendship, Gillum was also Speaker of the House in 2015. He also appointed Jett as chair of the House Committee on Revenue and Tax in 2015. What is important to note about the 2015 appointment is Gillum, a Republican, appointed Representative Jett chair of the very important committee while Jett was still a Democrat. He had this appointment while he was still a Democrat. That's a huge favor. Gillum received considerable criticism for passing over Republican legislators to appoint a Democrat as chair of that committee and some other committees. And the story doesn't end there. Jett was reelected as a Democrat in 2016 and was a Democrat when the House met in its original meeting. In its organizational meeting. Although Democrats were a small minority in the House of Representatives, they were able to use arcane rules to stack the House Revenue and Tax Committee and gain a majority of the membership, and Gillum was criticized again for ignoring pleas to fix the rules before the organizational meeting. With Gillum getting heavy criticism from Republicans and Jett wanting to keep his chairmanship, Jett switched parties and kept Gillum from having to look even worse. The switch made the membership 10-10. Gillum received loans from other representatives as well. The Democrat Gazette article noted that Gillum also filed an amendment to his report for 2015 to disclose that then state reps David Branscombe and Bill Gossage and John Eumakes wrote him checks for $700 each in December of 2015. That was after this newspaper, this is the Gazette, reported that Gillum Farms had state tax liens filed against it for more than $2,000. $700 each. That's an odd amount. I thought the same thing. I'm glad that this Conduit for Action commentary is bringing this up. So you have three guys that decide to give Jeremy Gillum $700 each. Interesting, right? So here we go. The Democrat Gazette, what the Democrat Gazette did not mention is Gillum had appointed each of them to a chairmanship. Branscombe in 2016, Gillum appointed Representative Branscombe as vice chair of the House Health Services Subcommittee of the House Committee on Public Health, Welfare, and Labor. Gossage in 2015 appointed Representative Bill Gossage as chair. So Gillum appointed Bill Gossage as chair of the House Management Committee and Legislative Faculties Committee. Then Gillum appointed Representative John Eubanks in 2015, vice chairman of Education, House Higher Education Subcommittee. Then in 2017, Gillum appointed him as chair, State Agencies and Governmental Affairs, House Constitutional Issues Subcommittee. Branscombe and Eubanks were appointed under rules that say the standing committee chair, together with the Speaker, makes the appointment. But these are de facto appointments by the Speaker because no standing committee chair would go against the Speaker's wishes right after being appointed to their position by the Speaker. After reading about the chairs giving loans to Gillum, you might be wondering if an envelope was circulated among chairs to raise money for Gillum with a sweet thank you card. None of the legislators mentioned here were freshmen. You would think they would know at a minimum that such financial relationships have the appearance of impropriety. As for Jeremy Gillum, it was common knowledge that he was in financial trouble and that he was looking for a plush state job. Eventually, Gillum was hired by the University of Central Arkansas in what is essentially a lobbying job, and he resigned from the legislature. He could not have gotten a job without the blessing of Governor Asa Hutchinson, just another friend doing something nice for a friend, right? With all this friendship going around, is this not ripe for further investigation? Yeah, I would think so. Representative Joe Jett's social media post basically says to the Democrat Gazette, "How dare you question my integrity? For fun, we'll close with another time when Jet thought his integrity was being questioned over a vote. Turned out Jet was wrong about which side won the vote. Yeah, it's good. This is what we played for you yesterday. It's a new piece up at conduitforaction.org. Friends with Benefits, Financial Benefits. You want to check that out. It's raising some really good points here. So, folks, I mean, yeah, the corruption. It's kind of depressing when you think about it. We've talked about this situation for a very long time. We've reported on the corruption. We've reported on the appearance of corruption. Recently, when you have the appearance of corruption, eventually you do have outright legal problems here. But it's kind of getting to the point where it's just exhausting to even be outraged about it. And it's just sad that this is it's sad to be correct, It's sad to follow the trail here where there's smoke, there's fire, and just continue to see, it really is the Marble Palace. It really is the Marble Palace. And they've got a completely different reality down there, They're detached from what everyday people think and feel in a lot of ways. And their judgment is clouded. And it's just really sad. Let's talk about real quick. I kind of amended the program. I want to talk real quick about issue number 5 while we have the time here. Issue 5, increasing the minimum wage. This is a terrible idea, but we're going to all be voting on this November. So it's important that you are educated and you form some sort of opinion on the issue. Okay? Right now, the minimum wage is $8.50 an hour. If you vote for the minimum wage increase, issue 5, then January of next year, the minimum wage will be raised to $9.25 an hour. Then the next year, in 2020, January, it'll be raised to $10 an hour. And then the year after that, in 2021, it'll be raised to $11 per hour. The highest state minimum wage currently is $11.50 in the state of Washington. This is terrible for business because, and it's terrible for people who want jobs as well. This is going to force more automation. It's going to mean less job availability. It's going to mean higher prices eventually. But, it's going to mean more taxpayer dollars for the government. The government will be able to tax on $11 an hour versus $8.50, thereby increasing the amount of money the government gets and more money for them to spend. I tell you, this is a really dangerous issue, and it could really cripple small business here in the state of Arkansas. To the point where, I know the governor, I think Governor Asa Hutchinson came out and said he was in favor of increasing the minimum wage. But he wants the legislature to do it. He doesn't want this particular initiative, I think, as the fence that he built there. That's the fence he built and is now currently straddling. Well, because, you got a Democrat who, might as well, it probably thinks it's okay to, if you ask them, to raise the minimum wage to $100 an hour. Why not? Why not raise it to $100 an hour? Anyway, these are the things that, if you really want to know more about how to stand up for small business in Arkansas, I would just encourage you to go to conduitforcommerce.org. They are putting Arkansas small business first, doing what the chamber used to do. And you need to go there now and check them out. It's conduitforcommerce.org, and we have to defeat this. You're going to have to. It's going to be tough, folks. Most people are under the illusion, especially if they're working a minimum wage job, that this is going to be good for them. It's not. It's going to hurt them in the long run. That's the first thing. The second thing, if you're making just above minimum wage, don't assume that you're all of a sudden going to get a raise. You know, a lot of people assume that if you're making $11 an hour now and the minimum wage is $8.50, and if you vote for this in January, it goes up to $9.25. You just assume that you're going to get a raise too, but you're not. You're going to stay probably right where you are. It's just a terrible job. It's a terrible thing all the way around, and from an economic standpoint, it makes absolutely no sense. Raising the minimum wage makes absolutely no sense. From a freedom standpoint, it makes absolutely no sense, where the government tells you what you can contract your services for, whether it's handing a bag of food out of a drive-through window or it's learning to be a welder. Anyway, we got to take a break. Folks, don't go anywhere. So glad that you're with us this morning. And we'll be back in just a moment.
If you believe the Second Amendment protects your right to defend your home with a firearm, where do you turn if the government confiscates your gun? To the courthouse. The Founding Fathers created your Seventh Amendment right to a civil jury to protect your freedoms. The courthouse is where you fight the overreaching hand of government. And the Brad Hendricks Law Firm is where the fight starts. Call the Brad Hendricks Law Firm at 501-221-0444. The Brad Hendricks Law Firm in Little Rock, standing ready using the Seventh Amendment to protect your Second Amendment rights. Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
We were training Afghani nationals that we were training who would put on the uniform of the coalition, who would take our supplies and our food and our training and then walk in with a suicide bomb or walk in and start shooting our own guys. And I think you all know who I'm talking about. I'm not going to be shy. It's Conduit.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Not only would we have uncovered it, but you can bet that Adam Schiff would have gone straight to the first camera he saw and told everything he knew, because that's exactly what he does.
I've been, I when it all comes out and when everything's, when it's all said and done, I just hope that the media, I hope the media actually reports on it. And when I mean the media, I mean the mainstream media, the ones that have sensationalized this idea of Russian collusion, and they've got a significant portion of the country that believes that somehow
exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Will she or won't she? I don't know. Of course, we're talking about Christine Blasey Ford here. Over at Mediaite, the story that was linked, I guess, the Drudge Report linked to, I guess, Joseph Wolfson is saying now that Christine Blasey Ford may not testify after all. Then you have these other accusations that a third woman may be emerging. I saw where Tom Cotton sent out a press release and said, "This is ridiculous." I'm paraphrasing here, but he essentially said, "Hey, listen, the character assassination's got to end. We got to bring this to a vote. This is just getting ridiculous." So you have Christine Blasey Ford's lawyer ripping the Senate plan to have a prosecutor ask questions, saying that it's not fair and respectful. I just don't think this woman wants to actually. I don't think she wants to come forward and. I don't think she wants to share her story. I don't think she actually wants to share her story publicly. I think, and the fact that she doesn't, to me, just means that, in all probability, this is a stall tactic, a delay tactic, and I don't know if they want to make it an election issue, but I think that actually is going to really work out poorly for the Democrats, because I think the average American right now is looking at this accusation after accusation, and they're first of all they're calling this sexual assault. That the allegations are that he sexually assaulted somebody, and I feel like we're getting very broad with the definition of sexual assault, don't you? That's just me, I guess. Anyway. The Mediaite article, Dr. Christine Blasey Ford's legal team has sent a letter, which can be viewed below via NBC's Frank Thorpe, to the Senate Judiciary Committee amid continuous negotiations ahead of Thursday. So they're still negotiating the hearing. In the letter addressed to Chuck Grassley, the Judiciary Chairman, Ford's legal team cites Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell's speech on the Senate floor on Monday afternoon as flatly inconsistent with Grassley's promise of a fair and credible process. In our view, the hiring of an unnamed, experienced sex crimes prosecutor, as Mr. Davis described in his email, is contrary to the majority's repeated emphasis on the need for the Senate and its committee members to fulfill their constitutional obligations. Well, why would they have a problem with an experienced sex crimes prosecutor? Do you think that maybe this prosecutor is going to ask questions as to the legal definition of what sexual assault is? Maybe that's why they don't, because, the left doesn't want to actually get into the definition of what sexual assault is. Now, I want to remind you that even if you get into that, you have a nominee who flatly denies these claims. So it doesn't even really, we don't really even need to go down to the road of, well, does it matter if the allegations are true? Does that disqualify him? I don't even think you need to go down that road, because how are you going to prove anything? You have the man saying, I didn't do this. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure he admitted on TV last night, quote, that he was a virgin. So he's getting very personal. They're attacking him personally, and he's having to come out and admit personal details of his life. So anyway, I don't know. At this point, I don't think she's going to testify. I think they're going to try to figure out any way they can for this woman to not testify. And so then you just leave it to the media. Leave it to the Democrats to work the media like a puppet, and they can just whip everyone up into an emotional frenzy, and hopefully they can use this for votes. But I think it's going to backfire. I really do, folks. Hey, we have one more hour coming your way next. We're going to be talking with Dr. Michael Busler at 7:33 about why nobody talks about the national debt anymore. It used to be a national emergency, at least on the conservative right, but nobody really talks about it anymore. We'll have that conversation at the bottom of the next hour. And the new developments from loans between legislators at the Marble Palace in Little Rock. We'll have that for you as well. Folks, thanks for listening. Back in just a moment.
we were training Afghani nationals that we were training, who would put on the uniform of the coalition, who would take our supplies and our food and our training, and then walk in with a suicide bomb or walk in and start shooting our own guys. And I think you all know who I'm talking about. I'm not going to be shy. It's Conduit.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Now, Donald Trump stole the election, and so they don't have to confront the fact that leftism was rejected. Maybe people are more concerned with the economy than they are with what pronouns that they need to use to be politically correct. And so because of that, and I mentioned this in the first hour, because there's a lot of people that think that the election was somehow, Russia influenced, or let's just say it was stolen from the Democrats. They don't want to admit that Hillary might be the worst candidate ever. Now we have these Silicon Valley giants that appear to be putting their thumbs on the scale here by censoring conservative content and things like that. And I don't know, and this is an honest question, I don't know, does the government get involved here eventually? Are they monopolies? What happens, Congressman Crawford? The reality is, most Americans now are disseminating political information, expressing themselves using these, quote, private companies. I mean, they are private, but it's a kind of a train wreck that we're headed for, and I don't really know what the answer is.
Well, here's what I want to encourage people to do. This is a market-based solution, and we have gotten so dependent on what are essentially now de facto utilities, things like Google and Twitter and Facebook. I shut my Facebook accounts down for a variety of reasons, and guess what? I still woke up the next morning, and the world continued to turn. So I am really hesitant to say we need to regulate these private entities, but I think there needs to be, from a government standpoint, but I think the American people need to make a determination, is this something they want to continue to support? And when people get tired of it, they'll vote with their feet, and the marketplace will do the work for them. At some point in time, these companies have to change their business model, and I'm talking about from the standpoint of filtering content that they don't particularly like. That's not necessarily a criminal offense. It's not necessarily something that requires government regulation. When these companies start breaking the law, when they start violating people's civil liberties, that's when the government will take a role. But from the standpoint of censoring, it's not a government entity. It's a marketplace, and this is a marketplace dynamic. And so I hope that people recognize that and will take the appropriate action themselves to correct the marketplace. As long as you give them the services, but they have no incentive to change. But if people quit using their services, if people drop Twitter and drop Facebook and drop whatever other tech services out there that purports to make their lives better, if they say, I'm not going to use it anymore because I don't think you're running a fair organization or something that's a good service to me as a conservative, then stop using it. Mm-hmm. And at some point in time, they'll get the message. But I don't think at this point, have risen to the level of government regulation. And I think what you've got to be careful about is if you do that, you might confer status on them as potentially a utility, which then gives them standing to run as sort of a legal monopoly. Just like we only have one utility company that provides power in the city, right? And that's a legal entity, and so that's okay. Well, we don't want to confer that status on these businesses because then that probably helps them escape scrutiny and helps them escape the consequences of a market-based consumer reaction.
Yeah, I definitely, I guess I see what you're saying, and I think I just wonder, in order for that to happen, in order for people to vote with their feet in a way and quit using it, I just wonder if there's going to be more revelations as to exactly, what some of these companies have been doing. Whether it's privacy or whatever the case may be, because my whole thing is if you were to start, let's say, a competitor to Facebook, are you inevitably going to be relying on Google to get it to the top of the search results, and these companies seem to almost be colluding against, conservatives. Sure. Go ahead.
Oh,
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, folks, welcome. It's hour number 2. Thanks so much for being with us. Conduit News Radio, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. Thank you so much for being with us. If you want to contribute to that, you can go to the Facebook page, sound off, facebook.com/Conduit News, or the YouTube page. I saw some comments on the YouTube page. You can watch the program on YouTube. You just go to Conduit News. Please subscribe. Click the little bell to receive notifications. We put smaller videos up there, too, so you'll get notified about it. Breaking news videos, things like that. I mean, we put the flashback video of Joe Jett, telling Josh Waters, if you say roll call one more time, I'm shutting you down. Are you questioning my integrity? Are you questioning my integrity? It was like almost like kind of a Clint Eastwood. Well, not quite a Clint Eastwood. Go ahead and make my day. You say roll call one more time. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, so we put that little gem up there for the Conduit News YouTube subscribers if you want to check it out and share it on Facebook or social media, whatever you use. Let's see, where do we want to start for this first hour? Coming up at the bottom of this hour, we'll be talking with Dr. Michael Busler about the national debt and why nobody talks about it anymore. He's an economics expert and a professor of finance at Stockton University. So we'll be doing that, so we have that for you. Let me see here as I look ahead. Let me go ahead and sorry. I'm producing the program all by myself today, yesterday and today. Tomorrow, Joe, our board operator, will be back. He will have returned, and so we will have a little bit more, I think, structured show. But in the meantime, I'm holding things down here. Let's go to this first one. Did anybody see yesterday that the tort reform proposal, so issue number 1, which is the tort reform proposal, it's terrible. It's a terrible idea. It sets a cap on life. It's not supported by pro-life groups in the state. It is producing debates and disagreements in House races. Now, specifically, the Hunter Field of the Democrat Gazette highlights House District 32, where they have, you have the Republican and the Democrat. You have a guy by the name of Jess Mallett decided to run. He's a Little Rock attorney. Jess Mallett decided to run because of issue 1, a proposed constitutional amendment that would set caps on attorneys' fees. Well, it's transparent, And then you have Sorvillo. Okay, who's the incumbent, Representative Jim Sorvillo, a Republican of Little Rock. He's an advertising consultant. He co-sponsored the measure, issue 1, and voted to refer it to the ballot. He says he supports the amendment because he said it would help prevent frivolous lawsuits. Of course, issue 1 doesn't help prevent frivolous lawsuits. Matter of fact, it doesn't do any. They didn't do anything to address frivolous lawsuits, and that's the problem with. That's one of the problems with issue 1. Their rhetoric just doesn't match up. So anyway, I started to think to myself, what if? I mean, I know it's a long shot, right? I know we're still very much a Republican state, but when you have these Republicans, not all of them, you got some Republicans that have got common sense and know issue 1's a bad deal. But when you have Republicans who are out there advocating for issue 1, and yet you have polling that shows that the people don't support issue 1 right now at a 2-to-1 margin, was the last thing I saw.
Is it possible that there may be some people that vote for a Democrat based on the Democrats' opposition to Issue 1? Now, to be fair, there are Democrats who support Issue 1. I think there are Democrats. Let me hang on. Don't quote me on that one. I'm assuming that there must be because it's Issue 1 is reeked with special interest, and it's more of a uniparty issue, I think, than anything. But I could be wrong on that. But I started to think, what if Republicans lose because they support Issue 1? Is that possible? Of course, nobody would probably blame that. But when you're out there saying that you support Issue 1 and the people across the state, according to polling, don't support Issue 1 on a 2-to-1 margin, I got to feel like that's going to carry over a little bit into the polling of your individual district. Just thinking here, I don't think Republicans thought Issue 1 through. I don't think they understood. They were taking the money from the nursing homes, and that's why we have Issue 1 on the ballot, And yet they claim it'll end special interest when, in fact, they're doing this for nursing homes. Jake Files got $80,000, after the tort reform proposal was filed back in 2015. And, of course, now that didn't go anywhere, and now we have the one that's currently on the ballot. Maybe that was, it eventually got there. The $80,000 eventually got you your tort reform proposal, your bad tort reform proposal on the ballot. It eventually got you there. So that's the first question, okay, some of these individual races. Second question is a follow-up between the second story, rather, is a follow-up between the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette story that exposed that you had Jim Hendren, the governor's nephew and the incoming president pro temp of the Senate, who gave Jake Files $4,000 to cover some hot checks, loaned him, and then he wrote the loan off. Then you got Jeremy Gillum, this Republican Speaker of the House, that took $16,000 from a Democrat who later became a Republican and was put on the most powerful committee that the House has, the House Revenue and Tax Committee. The follow-up story to that would be this headline from the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette's John Moritz. Hopefuls call for ban on loans between legislators. That's right. Both candidates for Arkansas Attorney General on Monday called for a prohibition on lending between state lawmakers in response to a report in this newspaper about the existence of such loans. Yes, that's right. So we have Attorney General Leslie Rutledge. She is saying that there needs to be something done about this, right? Quote, Republican Leslie Rutledge, to avoid even the appearance of impropriety, loans among members of the General Assembly should be prohibited. As Attorney General, I will work with the House and Senate leadership to draft legislation to ensure that this ill-advised practice is illegal. Her opponent, Democrat Mike Lee, also has a problem with the concept of lawmakers giving loans to legislators. So what we have here, legislators giving loans among legislators. It's lobbyists give loans to legislators, or I should say they used to give loans to legislators. Bruce Hawkins gave a loan to Jake Files for $30,000. And then, of course, they made that illegal. I'm sure there's a loophole in there somewhere. How would you get around that loophole? If Bruce Hawkins gave Jake Files a loan of $30,000 and then reported it at the last second, and then you had a bill that was passed that made it illegal, and this is all up in the latest CFA over at conduitforaction.org, their latest article, Friends with Benefits, Financial Benefits. Well, that's interesting. I wonder how you could get around that. If a lobbyist somehow were to find a way to put money in the legislator's pocket, then the legislator could loan another legislator money, but it would essentially be coming from a lobbyist. But you'd have to bridge that first gap, which would be a pretty big gap. Well, you could say, well, it's not a loan, it's a gift. I don't know. something something interesting there when you think about it. And I only look at that from past results. You know, when the Supreme Court says the GIF money is unconstitutional, what does the legislator do? They launder the money through economic planning and development districts to get around the Supreme Court ruling. So I don't know. There's something in me that says that there's something, more to this. Loans among legislators can be used to influence political appointments and legislation. That's what the Democrat said in his statement, the Attorney General candidate there, the Democrat. But let's talk about the other loan. There's a new loan that has been disclosed. The Arkansas Democrat Gazette has discovered a new loan between legislators, and it has to do with a financial disclosure report from 2016 when then State Representative Nate Bell listed State Representative Charlie Collins as a creditor to whom the value of $5,000 or more was personally owed or personally obligated and is still outstanding. So you have Nate Bell and Collins on Monday. They didn't want to say how much Nate Bell borrowed from Charlie Collins, but Nate Bell said he complied with state law and declined to comment further. Basically, go away, kid. You bothered me. I didn't break any laws here. I didn't do nothing. I followed the law. You don't need to know how much I borrowed from Charlie Collins. I'm gonna have to get better at the mob accent. So it's just look. I'm just having fun here. It's just the appearance of impropriety here, at the very least, right? There's nothing illegal about a legislator giving another legislator a loan. It just stinks to high heaven. It just stinks to high heaven. So Nate Bell, let's see here. On if you go look at the financial disclosure report, okay, Charlie Collins reports that he gave a loan of more than $12,500 to Nate and Phyllis Bell. Now, Phyllis Bell is former State Representative Nate Bell's wife, and you don't want to bring spouses into this unless they, the part of the story would be that Phyllis Bell works for Governor Asa Hutchinson. She has a government job. Okay. So Collins also said that he is receiving more than $1,000 in interest on the loan. Then in 2017, Collins reported on a loan of more than $1,000 but less than $12,000 to Nate and Phyllis Bell, and receiving interest income of more than $1,000 on a loan to the couple. Okay, so there's been two loans then. There's been one for over $12,500, and then there's been one for somewhere in between $1,000 and $12,000. Okay, all right. That's the new loan here. So why is all this coming out now? I smell the FBI. I'm just telling you, this is all coming out right now, and I think it has something to do with, I don't know, I think there's an effort to get out in front of all this. Don't you think there's an effort to get out in front of all this? Why now? Why are they telling us this now? And this is Asa Hutchinson's Republican Party, but he has nothing to do with anything like this. The mainstream media wants you to be clear on that. Huh. Now, they do remind us in this story that Jim Hendren revealed to the Gazette that he advanced. Now, it was Hendren that revealed. It's Hendren that said he gave Jake Files $4,000. Now, is this something that's going to come out anyway? The reason I say this is because it was also Jim Hendren that came out and said Jim Hendren's name was redacted in the Tim Brooks documents. Judge Tim Brooks declassified. I'm obsessed with declassification because I want to see that FISA. He unsealed, Tim Brooks unsealed the John Woods documents from the trial. And in that, you had Jim Hendren's name, but we didn't know it was Jim Hendren because it was redacted. But he was the senator that John Woods approached and said, hey, give me $10,000, Jim, in case we have to run against each other one day. Jim said no, but then Jim refused to cooperate with the FBI when the FBI said, hey, if you really want to go after him, we got to have a wire. Then Jim and the Republican establishment supported John Wood's reelection after knowing all of this. It's very, 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 very strange. They would rather have a crooked Republican that's unprincipled than one who is, an actual conservative. But we didn't know that. Jim Hendren said that he was the redacted name. Now Jim Hendren saying that he gave Jake Files, who's now a convicted felon, $4,000 to cover hot checks back in 2015 when things, when the rope was just starting to unravel for Jake Files. I mean, later in 2015, he received that $80,000 from David Norsworthy. I mean, my goodness. Support the party, though. Jackie on Facebook writes, support the party. She's being sarcastic. That's what you're going to hear right now. What would the Republican Party have to do? Now, I think the Republican Party platform is fantastic. I really, really do. I believe in it. I believe in limited government, being able to, being fiscally responsible, lower taxes, lower regulation, all these great things. Obviously, I agree with the social aspect of it as well, the low-hanging fruit social issues. But this is come on. We can't talk about the party platform. We have to have honest government first. We have to have honest government first. How am I supposed to count on these Republican legislators to know the pitfalls of socialism and big government and the benefits of limited government if they're financially vulnerable and they need $16,000 from a Democrat? How in the world do you ever think you're going to advance conservative policy or protect the people's rights or do anything on behalf of the people when you're sending politicians down there when money is involved? Party differences don't mean anything. I mean, the amount of potential political leverage when Joe Jett gives Jeremy Gillum, the Speaker of the House. Joe Jett essentially could have been operating as the Speaker of the House last year, and nobody knew it. Talking about a deep state, Democrat-turned-Republican Joe Jett, turns out he was the shadow Speaker of the House in all probability. I want you to think about that for a second. How in the world are we supposed to have faith in these guys when they're down there needing money to get bailed out of stuff? It's a fair question. The people deserve an honest government. And we're supposed to believe the same leaders. Now, I'm not necessarily lumping in the new speaker, and some people may get on me about that. Matthew Shepard is the new speaker. Now, all indications show that the new Speaker of the House, Matthew Shepard, in all probability, is the approved, arbiter of power right now, with the status quo. Okay, I am not 100% about that. I don't know. Let's let Matthew Shepard, Speaker of the House. Let's see what happens. Okay, let's see what happens. But the rest of the gang in the Senate is the same. Okay, we've got the majority leader, who is no different than the old President Pro Tem, Jonathan Dismang, who's a part of the gang, who's a part of the good old boy system, right? And you got Jim Hendren now, who's the new guy, and he is, he's the governor's nephew, as well as he knew about John Wood, supported him anyway, and now he wants to come out and try to fix this. He wants to try to lead on ethics. No, there's no credibility there. There's no credibility there. With the stuff that's been going on, you cannot continue to put out the same faces and expect us to have confidence in your leadership when you have failed us. You have failed the people. You have failed, if for these diehard Republican Party people, you've failed the Republican Party is what's happened. When you fail to meet your own standards and then you cover it up and you don't own up to it and take responsibility for it, eventually the people won't believe you when you really need them to believe you, when you really need them, when you're trying to lead them. It may be an honest attempt. I honestly now I see the error of my ways. I should have supported John Woods after he asked me for a bribe. We should have just let the people decide. We shouldn't have been so protectionist over this Medicaid expansion, $2 billion program vote. The money in politics is sick. You may honestly believe all that now. But you did nothing about it when you knew it was going on. You cannot be the face of a movement to reform the Arkansas Senate or the Arkansas General Assembly if you've been part of the problem and have said nothing this entire time. You refuse to cooperate with the FBI. I mean, you can't, with a straight face, expect the people to be like, okay. Now, and if the media, and I'm talking about if the statewide mainstream media doesn't start calling into question the credibility of the same people who've been a part of this the whole time, but now they're really not getting much blame. If they don't start doing this, then you're going to have a situation where there's some sort of, lipstick on a pig, and then you're going to have everybody claim that they fixed the problem, and they're going to try to take credit for something that they were a part of. And I don't think that's right. And I don't think the mainstream media in Arkansas, as much as I disagree with some of you guys, I don't think you guys should be used that way. I'm hoping that there will be others that understand what their job is, and that is to speak truth to power. And right now, power has gotten away with an awful lot. And it's because not enough people know and report on the inside baseball of what goes on at the Arkansas Capitol. And because not enough people report on it, not enough people know about it, and the smaller group of people that know the intricacies of how something works, the more opportunity there is for corruption. And that's what we're seeing play out right before us. The smaller the group of people, the more opportunity there is for corruption. And we've had the same small group of people, these backroom deals at the Marble Palace, and that's where we are. And I am way, way over. I got to go to break.
I absolutely think that there is a level of collusion there in the marketplace with regard to tech companies that rely on each other to advance their own bottom lines. And let's keep in mind that that's what this is about. This is about advancing their own bottom lines. And in the process, you find that Facebook, Google, Twitter, whatever, do provide a service and make your life easier to some degree. But life wasn't necessarily all that bad before we had those things. I'm not suggesting we go backwards, but what I am suggesting is that if you don't like what's taking place in the marketplace, do something about it. There's a variety of things people can do. Why do we not have an alternative to Google? Well, Google got so big, and we allowed them to. They got so
determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Yeah, all right, so welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. I was severely up against the hard. We're up against the hard break now, and so I apologize. My rambling and my ranting went on, and that's what happens when you don't have a person, telling you to go to break. So hey, when we come back, we're going to be talking with Dr. Michael Busler about why nobody talks about the national debt anymore. I mean, aren't you curious as to why nobody talks about the national debt anymore? I know I am. So stay tuned for that. Also, in some stories we're going to have to get to tomorrow. I want to cover this. Last week, we learned that the Arkansas Economic Development Commission is still engaged with Chinese companies, even amid the new Trump trade tariffs. And they're trying desperately to still – and it says here that the Arkansas Economic Development Commission officials are talking daily with Chinese officials. That's right. Your Arkansas Economic Development Commission is daily trying to undermine the Trump trade agenda. Why would anyone want to make a communist Chinese company rich at this point? I don't care what you've promised. Clearly, they're stealing from us. You had people indicted 2 months ago or a month ago for stealing our rice technology down in Stuttgart. Now, this is wrong, folks. We got to go back in just a moment.
I absolutely think that there is a level of collusion there in the marketplace with regard to tech companies that rely on each other to advance their own bottom line. And let's keep in mind that that's what this is about. This is about advancing their own bottom lines. And in the process, you find that Facebook, Google, Twitter, whatever, do provide a service and make your life easier to some degree. But, life wasn't necessarily all that bad before we had those things. I'm not suggesting we go backwards, but what I am suggesting is that if you don't like what's taking place in the marketplace, do something about it. There's a variety of things people can do. Why do we not have an alternative to Google? Well, Google got so big, and we allowed them to. They got so big that no one else has been able to come in and replicate that and be competitive. And I think, quite frankly, that the tech cabal that exists in Silicon Valley is content with that, because you handle that, we'll handle this. Okay, so Google, you go do your thing over there. Twitter, we'll go do our thing over here. Amazon, you're set up over there, and they kind of got it all worked out together as they kind of chop up the marketplace in various pieces. And here's what's going on. But unless and until some other people recognize, there's room to move in the marketplace, and we can do some things differently. And this is what we're going to be up against. We're going to be up against these tech giants, and this is really bottom line driven. So I don't know. Look, if I could write an algorithm to replace Google, I'd do it today. I'm not smart enough to do that. But there's people out there that are. They've just got to be capitalized well enough that they can go out and challenge these tech companies. And I'd like to see some startups move away from Silicon Valley. I've been out there and I've talked to these 40-pound brains before, and they don't have anything that we don't have. They just have an established system out there that allows folks, under the right circumstances, to be able to bring something to the market. And it's taken place over a period of years. And it's not that it can't be replicated elsewhere. It's just that's where it has. They have coalesced around this tech corridor in Silicon Valley, and that's where all the things happen. It doesn't have to be that way, but that's the way it is right now.
Congressman Rick Crawford, I appreciate it. It's always great, and I love the discussion and your thoughts on these subjects. And I know the people of Arkansas are, excited about the work you're doing and pleased with what you're doing on the House Intel Committee. And I can't thank you enough, sir.
You bet. My privilege. Thanks,
right.
man.
Yes. Have a great weekend. Folks,
I absolutely.
all right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. Phone number 870-275-9799 is the telephone number if you would like to contribute to the conversation. Hey, folks, welcome back to the program. We have public policy analyst back with us. He's an economics expert, professor of finance at Stockton University in New Jersey. Dr. Michael Busler is back with us. Michael, thanks for coming on the show, sir.
Hi, Paul. How are you? It's my pleasure to be here.
Yes, sir. I am, and it's always great to talk to you. And one of the reasons I want to have you on today is I saw there's an article out there, an unprecedented government spending spree picks up, and it says here the federal government could spend close to half its appropriated budget in the final fiscal quarter, which ends September 30th. Why does no one talk about the national debt anymore, Dr. Busler?
Yeah, certainly the public debt is huge, and particularly in the last 10 years, it's doubled essentially in the last 10 years, and it is going to be a problem, especially now that interest rates are going up, and that's going to mean it's more expensive to carry it. So why is the debt going up, especially when Republicans control the president and both houses of Congress, and certainly the Republican Party generally addresses the issue of deficits and tries to reduce them. The thing is, it's a question now of priorities. So when President Trump got into office, there were a number of things that needed to be fixed immediately. One was we had an economy that was stuck in a slow growth position for almost 2 decades. In fact, before Trump got into office, the economy hadn't had a 3% annual growth rate since 2005, and it hadn't had a 4% growth rate since the year 2000. And that's caused all kinds of problems, economic and many of the social problems. So that needed to be fixed. Secondly, our military had been decimated. And the reason was in 2011, Congress tried to reduce government spending. And they did it by taking a look at some of the social programs we have and how much money the government is spending. Indeed, more than half of the government spending every year goes for what we call income maintenance programs, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and other social programs. So Congress said, look, we're going to have to get some of those numbers down. Now, President Obama, whose priorities were to cure perceived social injustices and have economic growth as a secondary priority, he said, if you're going to cut spending in social programs, for every dollar you cut in social programs, you have to cut a dollar out of the military. So they passed this sequester, and that's what happened. Congress tried to control spending on social programs, but because of the sequester, they had to cut spending on the military. Well, after about 4 or 5 years of low spending, our military was in terrible shape. Large percentages of our airplanes couldn't fly. We couldn't have a conflict and try to have enough resources to come out, be successful in these conflicts. So President Trump addressed both problems. To get the economy going, he copied what Ronald Reagan did in 81, implemented in 82, and what Kennedy Johnson did in 63, 64, both actions which led to high growth in the economy. So he copied his tax cut. After that, implemented the tax cut in 2018 this year, and economic growth has started to increase. In fact, we're up to about a 4% growth rate. The third quarter number will be out the last week of October. It'll probably show about a 4.5% growth rate. So he's got the economy growing. He did it through tax cuts. Now, tax cuts did not add to the deficit because the first half through the second quarter of this year, total tax revenue to the government, even at the lower tax rates, total tax revenue to the government is about 1% higher in 2018 than it was in 2017. So the tax cut did not cause an increase in the deficit. However, the deficit is way up. So what caused that was primarily President Trump said, look, we have to get our military back up to the strength where it should be. And to do that, we're going to have to spend close to $700 billion this year and next year. So he got that passed also. So most of the deficit that's incurred now and the increase in the deficit is due primarily to military spending. Also recall last year when Trump signed a budget that did increase spending in everything, the military and other social programs, his exact words were, never again will I sign a spending bill like this. So again, it's a question of priorities. He's got the economy growing. He's on his way to getting the military built up. He's got the tax code close to where he wants it, and I think they're going to work on that again shortly. The next thing President Trump will tackle after the midterm elections is reducing government spending. So the deficit is up, the spending is up. It's sort of a temporary thing, at least until we get through these next elections. President Trump will then concentrate on that, and you'll see him bring spending down, and you'll see the deficit being reduced.
We're talking with Dr. Michael Busler. He is an economics expert, professor of finance at Stockton University in New Jersey. Well, if what you said is true in terms of he's going to tackle spending next. That would put a lot of more. I mean, it really raises the stakes with the midterm elections coming up, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it certainly does. Now, they could have tackled the issue of the budget back in August and September. The fiscal year runs out at the end of this year. They passed the short-term spending measure because everybody, Republicans and Democrats, didn't want to go through a budget fight right before the elections. President Trump said if spending doesn't go the way it should go, he's prepared to shut down the government. Now, when the government gets shut down, really everybody loses. Everybody points fingers. Whose fault is it? Years ago, it was blamed on the Republicans, and it hurt them. The last time, they ended up blaming it on the Democrats, the Schumer shutdown, they called it. But it's too risky for either party to try to reduce government spending right before an election is about to come up, because the fight is going to be very nasty. So they passed the short-term resolution, will get us into next year. Once the elections are through, then President Trump will concentrate on reducing spending. And you're absolutely right. It's very critical for the Republicans to be able to maintain the majority in the House and the Senate. I believe, in spite of some of the polls you see and some of the rhetoric, I think when people go to the polls in November and get ready, get in that booth, and they're going to pull the lever who they're going to vote for, the most important thing to them is their economic security, and secondly is their national security. And President Trump has done very well in both of those areas, and the Republican message will be vote Republican and let's keep this thing going. I think the Republicans are going to end up maintaining the majority in the House. I think they're going to add to the majority in the Senate, probably ending up with about 57 or 58 senators, and it could be as high as 60 senators. So it's very critical what happens in this election. As if the Republicans can maintain the control, again, as I think they will, they'll have a much easier time of reducing spending next year and getting that deficit down.
Well, I hope you're right on both accounts. I hope they keep the House and the Senate, and I hope they would start to tackle spending. But like you said, in the conservative realm of ideas, if you're going to spend money, a lot of conservatives would rather you spend it on defense. Certainly, and everybody knows that President Obama, or at least believes he was a weak president when it comes to that sort of thing. Let me ask you this, Michael Busler, are you a black sheep in New Jersey? How are you from New Jersey? How is this possible?
Well, I happen to live at the New Jersey shore, and I've been a beach kind of guy for years. But you're absolutely right. It's very difficult, not only where I live, but I'm also in academia. The university where I teach was originally started 40, 50 years ago as a liberal arts college. So they still have a very strong liberal arts view of things. And at the school where I teach, probably 95% of the faculty and probably the students, too, tend to follow a liberal view. I try to give my views where I can. I used to be a little more vocal with them, but it turns out that it ended up in a bunch of shouting matches. So now I'm very selective with what I do, and then I write for national publications.
Yeah, and you certainly do write for national publications. Do you see the effectiveness of the mainstream press on some of these young people? I mean, I would venture to think that all of a sudden a lot of students are now really, really worried about Russia. When in the past, like the left used to be very anti-war, now they're very pro-conflict because they want to believe that Donald Trump's a KGB agent. I know we're getting off topic here, but I'm just so curious.
Well, I'll tell you, it really irks me that the students are not given both sides of an argument. I tell my students the purpose of going to college or getting an education, but the main thing is you learn critical thinking skills so that when you run into situations and problems, you have the skills to be able to figure things out. Now, in order for the critical thinking skills to be effective, you have to gather information. And to gather information, you need both sides of an argument. I think professors are doing the students a huge disservice by not giving both sides of an argument and let them figure out what the best way to go is. And it's not just at my university, it's at universities all across the country. The students are fed this very liberal viewpoint without looking at what the other side should be. You know, I have a very simple example. When Bernie Sanders was running for president, I was teaching an ethics class, business ethics class, and 95% of the students favored Bernie Sanders. And I said, well, why is that? And they said, well, look, you're going to get free tuition, you're going to get free health care, you're going to get a lot of other services that we're not going to have to pay for. And I said, well, how is that? What do you mean you don't have to pay for it? Who's going to pay for it? Well, the government will pay for it, they say. I said, all right, well, the government doesn't have any money. All the government has is what they take from people that earn it. So what you're saying is you want to take money away from people that have earned it and give it to people who, for whatever reason, and I'm not judging anybody, who for whatever reason haven't earned it. That reduces incentive for people to go out and earn money, especially if they know the government's going to take a big chunk of it, and that tends to slow the economy down. They sort of understand that, and then I give them this example where it hits home with them. I said, look, take 5 students in the class, and in my class you have to have at least a 70 to get credit for the course. So suppose you have 5 students take an exam, one gets a 95 and the other 4 get 65. I said, how would you feel if I took 20 points away from the high scorer and gave 5 points each to the other 4? That way the other 4 had 70 and they passed, and the person that got the good grade still has 75. He doesn't need any more than 70. And they say, well, that's not fair. I mean, the student worked hard. He earned a grade. He should keep exactly what he earned. And I say to them, that's exactly the point I'm trying to make, that when people go out into and work and through their efforts they earn income, they should be able to keep the income that they earned. Look, we're all very compassionate people, and we want to help people that truly need it, but there are people that don't need it that are collecting some of this, and it's the people that are earning it that are losing out. Mm-hmm. Once I explain it that way, I see they scratch their heads a little bit, start to think about it, and that's what I'm trying to do, to get the students to use the critical thinking skills we're supposed to be teaching them, take a look at both sides of an argument, and see which one makes the most sense. Professors are doing a huge disservice, in my opinion, by not presenting both sides of an argument.
You know, we're talking with Dr. Michael Busler. He is a professor of finance at Stockton University in New Jersey, a featured columnist at Newsmax Life's at townhall.com, expert in economics. Dr. Busler, first of all, thank you. This has kind of turned in towards the end of the interview as a way to at least highlight that, hey, at liberal universities there are some good guys that are attempting to educate kids and teach them to think for themselves. Is there anybody else kind of like you, or is there some sort of professor alliance where you are, or are you pretty much the only one?
Well, there are 330 faculty members where I teach. I found 2 other ones in the business school that tend to go along with me. So there are a couple more. I'm hoping there are more than just the 2 that I've been able to find. So I think there are some out there. Many of them are afraid to sort of speak up, especially if you're a younger professor, you don't have tenure, you're afraid to speak up about some things because you're a little worried about what it might do to your career. Mm-hmm. But I think there are more people out there, and as the economy grows and as there's more opportunity available to everyone, I think the more conservative argument will come forth, and hopefully the professors will take a look at both sides and start presenting that.
Yeah, when I was in college, I was a liberal, but then you start to think about things differently once you go get a job and you start working, and then you see that money taken out of your check, and so that's something I think that's very, very common. And like you said, if the economy continues to grow, there's going to be more people out there who are going to understand the idea of incentive and disincentive, and the idea of, hey, look, I was just successful, and I want to be more successful than I am today, and I need a growing economy and a capitalist free market society in order to do that.
That's exactly right. I was the same way. I was in college, and I was liberal also. The government shouldn't allow this to happen, and the government should make sure this person's taken care of, and the government has an obligation to do all these things. Then I got out in the real world, started working, and I saw everything I wanted to do, the government to do, was coming out of my paycheck. So I said, look, that really doesn't benefit anybody. I've worked hard to earn this. I should be able to keep it. And when you give somebody something for nothing, there's no incentive for them to go out and earn it themselves. If somebody is hungry, and you have a fisherman who's caught a lot of fish, well, the Democratic view would be, look, you've got a lot of fish, give some to the person that's hungry. The problem is that actually creates two problems. One, the person who gets the fish now becomes dependent on somebody for survival. And two, the person who's doing the fishing has to catch enough for himself and for somebody else. A better position would be to teach the person who's hungry how to fish so he can get his own fish. Then he takes care of himself. The other person just has to catch enough fish for himself. Everybody's happy in the longer term. So just giving somebody something for nothing is, because you want to be a humanitarian, is really not in the best interest of everybody. Giving somebody opportunity, which is what this growing economy will do, give people opportunity to take care of themselves. President Trump said when he got in, I'm going to reduce spending on food stamps. And the Democrats were up in arms, and people are going to starve to death. This is horrible. Spending, the number of people on food stamps is down by about 4 million since President Trump took office. He's spending less on food stamps, not because he's not giving it to people who need it, but because there are fewer people that need it because the economy is growing. And that's essentially how he's going to reduce the spending on social programs, get the economy growing again. And I think we may see some real high growth next year. I wouldn't be surprised to see a quarter or two next year with having growth over 5%.
Wow, that would be huge.
Once that happens, there'll be opportunity for everybody. And I bring that up, and people tell me I'm crazy, and I say, look, when Reagan cut taxes, went into effect in 1982, in 1984, the economy grew for the entire year at a 7.5% rate. So these kind of tax cuts can spur higher economic growth, and I see that coming next year. Some of the talk recently about a recession, I think, is way off base. I think we're due for a long-term high growth period in the U.S. economy to make up for the lack of good growth we've had for the last really 18 years.
Dr. Michael Busler, I appreciate it. Thanks so much for coming on, and I hope we can do this again soon. It's always great to talk to you.
Thank you, Paul. It was my pleasure.
Yes, sir. So you can find his articles, his commentaries, folks, at Newsmax, LifeSet, and townhall.com. That's Michael Busler, Dr. Michael Busler. All right, so we're going to take a break, going to reset here, going to be back in just a moment. Don't go anywhere, back in a second.
If you believe the Second Amendment protects your right to defend your home with a firearm, where do you turn if the government confiscates your gun? To the courthouse. The Founding Fathers created your Seventh Amendment right to a civil jury to protect your freedoms. The courthouse is where you fight the overreaching hand of government. And the Brad Hendricks Law Firm is where the fight starts. Call the Brad Hendricks Law Firm at 501-221-0444. The Brad Hendricks Law Firm in Little Rock, standing ready using the Seventh Amendment to protect your Second Amendment rights. Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
We were training Afghani nationals that we were training who would put on the uniform of the coalition, who would take our supplies and our food and our training and then walk in with a suicide bomb or walk in and start shooting our own guys. And I think you all know who I'm talking about. I'm not going to be shy. It's Conduit.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
I absolutely think that there is a level of collusion there in the marketplace with regard to tech companies that rely on each other to advance their own bottom line. And let's keep in mind that that's what this is about. This is about advancing their own bottom lines. And in the process, you find that Facebook, Google, Twitter, whatever, do provide a service and make your life easier to some degree. But, life wasn't necessarily all that bad before we had those things. I'm not suggesting.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us this morning and starting your morning with us here. It's the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Tomorrow on the program, we're going to be talking with Dr. Mavuto Kalulu and Tara Aquia. The Arkansas Center for Research and Economics released its inaugural County Transparency Index. We will be discussing that at length tomorrow on the program, as well as we've got an exciting report that's due out tomorrow. Follow the Money Report. I believe that's going to be coming out from Conduit, so you're going to want to watch for that, as well as Patriots VAC 746. At 6:33, we'll be talking with Mr. Chuck Clifton from the great Patriots of VAC 746. You never want to miss what they've got going on. Kind of looking at later in the week with the schedule, looks like Jerry Cox, the president of the Family Council, he has started a statewide tour educating people about Issue 1 and how terrible it is and how we all need to vote against it. He'll be on the program at 7 o'clock on Thursday, as well as 7:33, Mr. Dan Perkins, who is a political contributor to the Daily Caller and LifeSet and Clash Daily and Newsmax, as well as The Hill. We're going to be on talking about Kavanaugh and this whole Supreme Court mess. Obviously, everything is gearing up to basically a fever pitch on Thursday with Rod Rosenstein going to meet Donald Trump at the White House, and we're going to have the Kavanaugh testimony with Christine Blasey Ford. That is, if she doesn't back out. There are now reports that she may be getting cold feet. Folks, this broadcast is available for your viewing and listening pleasure, podcast or video, at conduitnews.com. Arkansas, have a great day and be safe.